Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augmented Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I'm your host as usual, and obviously welcome back to the show. Today's episode 116 of the show, and before we get started, we're going to do a little house cleaning because, well, duh, you guys know we're going to do it. So I do want to thank you guys for coming back and listening. It really means a lot to me that you guys keep coming back and, downloading these episodes, sharing these episodes, liking them, disliking them, and just being awesome and, giving me feedback on the topics, letting me know in the comment section in the YouTube videos, like, what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on the topics we actually talk about? And, also for the people that follow me on my social media handles, that you guys constantly keep voting on the polls when I, make the polls to decide the topics for the week and letting me know what you guys think about it, or if there's specific talking points in those topics that you want me to talk about. And I really want to thank you guys for that, because it really means a lot to me that you guys are very interactive in that sense, that you're willing to provide input, and then I would take your input and then, then provide something that you consider valuable, which is my input. And it's going to be interesting, especially because this week is a very important week for gaming, because we have the Xbox event this week. So obviously we had the Sony event, and now we're going to have the Xbox event. And this one is a very big week because this is a very Xbox centric week. I know I'm going to get called an Xbot for this. Because, we're talking a lot about Xbox this week. Both episodes are about Xbox. And this one is a little bit more interesting because it actually leads into the discussion regarding the Xbox event, which the Xbox event is obviously going to be for Friday's episode because the event's on Thursday. So I'm going to watch the event, give my thoughts, make my observations, record, and then publish the episode. But for this one, we're talking about something that actually recently happened, but it is interesting that it did happen, especially because a lot of people are saying Microsoft is a bit hypocritical for this because of their whole no Xbox left behind mantra that they're really spewing. But before we get into that, I also want to thank the Patreon backers for supporting the show. Thank you guys. I love you guys to death. You guys continue to be awesome. And if you want to be a Patreon backer, you can obviously just click the link down below and become a Patreon backer. It's only $2 a month and you get early access to the episodes. In time, we're going to add more of those benefits for the Patreon backers so you guys can have more content and feel a little bit more inclined to become a backer. But aside from that, this is going to be an interesting episode because we're going to be talking about Microsoft discontinuing the Xbox One X. Now, I know what you guys are thinking, the hell? Why are they discontinuing the One X? And it's not just the One X, it's the One X and the One S all digital edition, which that one has actually only been out for not even 2 years, probably less than a year or less than a year. And Microsoft's discontinuing it along with the One X, which is obviously a big shocker because the One X was considered at the time the most powerful console, which it was. If we're talking about a console that has pushed the Jaguar CPUs inside the consoles to their limits, the One X did. It did. Granted, yes, the 8th generation was not the best generation for Microsoft. That's just cold, hard facts. The Xbox One did not do so well compared to the PS4. It had a lot of issues at launch because of lack of, I'd say, focus, a lack of direction. And because of that, the brand suffered heavily, and it took Phil Spencer to pull them out of their asses and pull it back, make something better and put investments, because I think that's what this is all about. And that's what we're going to talk about. So a lot of people are getting upset, and I'm actually going to be referring the article from The Verge that talked about this because they did get confirmation from Microsoft regarding this. So it is confirmed, it is happening. And as I go through it, I noticed how a lot of discussion regarding it is a little bit negative because they're like, oh, Microsoft's being hypocritical. You know, Microsoft is not sticking to the no console left behind program that they're like, yes, we're going to support the older consoles like the One line for about 1 to 2 years, and then we can start focusing everything on the Series X. And it's weird that and some people are saying, well, that doesn't make any sense because then that's just going to hold back the next generation. And then now they're doing this where they discontinue it. And now people are like, well, Microsoft, you guys are being hypocrites. Like, you guys aren't sticking to your word. And it's also fascinating because they're the same people that got mad at them for saying that they wanted to support the console. So it's like when they decide that they don't want to keep making them, then people get mad. But then they say that they want to support them, they still get mad. Like, it does not matter how these people, like, you got to mean, like, I know some people are going to say these are the Sony ponies just coming out to just, you know, just troll. And one thing people need to understand is this is actually a smart business move. This really is. Like, I know some people people are going to get mad at me for saying that, but there's a difference between supporting a product for a long period of time and not manufacturing it. Like, there's a difference. You can support a product for a long time. Doesn't mean you have to keep making it. Like, Apple does the same thing. Like, yes, they still support the iPhone 6S. They don't keep making the iPhone 6S. Like, yes, they support it with software updates and everything, and you can get it fixed by them, but they're not going to keep selling them. They won't, because it doesn't have much benefit to keep selling them. And this is a similar case where Microsoft, yes, they're going to provide 1 to 2 years of extra games and support, and then after that, you should upgrade. And yes, I understand that a lot of people are kind of upset because the One X is a mid-generation refresh, but it's also a powerful refresh. But this is one thing people also need to understand is, look, we know that the Project Lockhart is going to happen. Like, we know this. Like, we know Project Lockhart is coming, and that is the replacement for the One X. And some people are like, whoa, what? That doesn't make any sense. And it is, because even though, yes, the One X is a very powerful console, 6 teraflops of graphics performance, you know, it's pushing the Jaguar CPUs to the highest clocks that they possibly could get with them. But Lockhart is going to perform better because even though, yes, on paper, its GPU has less teraflops, but it is a more advanced GPU, and it also has a more advanced CPU, because some people are saying that, oh, Lockhart is going to have a downclocked CPU. No, they're running the exact same CPU, same clocks. The only difference is the graphics. And it's really annoying that a lot of people are starting to spread this misinformation because it was never once stated. None of the rumors stated that the Lockhart would have a underclocked CPU. No, none of them did. They literally stated it's the exact same CPU, same clocks. The only difference is the GPU. It's going to have 4 teraflops instead of 12. That's the only difference. Same amount of, well, obviously not the same amount of RAM because, well, duh. But the Project Lockhart is primarily targeted for 1080p gaming and 1440p gaming. That's why it's the more affordable option, but it's also the better entry point. And yes, the Xbox One X was able to do 4K 60 in some games, and it was able to do 4K 30 on a lot of games that was cross-platform. So, you know, if you can get it on a PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X, the One X would have the better version because it had just had more power than the PS4 Pro by county mile. It did. That's just objectively speaking, and it didn't sound like a jet engine, you know. So, like, I know people are gonna get mad at me for saying that. I'm just like, come on, guys, like, let's just be real for a minute. That's what happens. That console sounded like a jet engine. Like, we're not even being mean. A lot of people have said the same thing about PlayStation, is that, yeah, when the fans kick up, these things are not quiet. And the Xboxes tend to be a little bit more quiet. Now, what is a little bit more interesting is the all digital edition being canned. Like, yes, I get it. The One S digital edition, people were kind of excited when it came out. They're like, oh, this is going to be a good option, you know, because, you know, digital is the future and everything like that. And then it gets canned. Like, it makes sense that it did. And it also is interesting that the One S, the regular One S, the one that I had, didn't get canned, and they're still going to keep it going. And it makes logical sense. Why do I say that? You also have to keep in mind, guys, when the new consoles launch, the One X and the Series X and the Series S, which the Series S is Lockhart, if they would have kept the One X, the One S all digital, and the regular One S, there would have been 5 Xboxes on the market. Sony, on the other hand, would only have the PS4, PS4 Slim. Well, I don't even think they make the base PS4 anymore. I think it's just the Slim, the Pro, and then it would be the PS5 and then the all digital PS5. Like, there would be a good amount of consoles out in the market, and the naming is very close. Like, think about it: Xbox One X, Xbox Series X. Like, to be honest, I think there would be a lot of parents or grandparents that would buy these consoles for their, kids or grandkids, and they would confuse the two. I think that's a lot of people had the same concern that, look, this is really a good idea to keep these things on the market, especially when they get outperformed. Yes, I get why they're keeping the One S, the regular One S, because it's going to be heavily discounted, but it's also a really good 4K Blu-ray player. For Media Box, it's really good for that. It's a really good 4K Blu-ray player that's able to play games. It's really good in terms of watching TV and stuff like that. A lot of people use it. It makes sense. Why would you buy a regular 4K Blu-ray player where you can just buy the Xbox One S that's able to do more than a regular Blu-ray player and does the same job, And it makes sense that it would stick around and not the One X and the One S all digital edition, because with the One S all digital, yeah, you can't actually put Blu-ray disc in there. You can't. It doesn't have it. So you just have to download everything all digital, and most people don't really like that. They like being able to pop in their Blu-rays and just go. Because there's still people that buy DVDs, and that's cool. I don't. I either rent the movies or I just buy it digitally. And there's people that like to just do that, and I'm like, cool. You do you, bro. But this is where I say that, yes, it's a smart business move. And I know some people are going to say, but doesn't this contradict Microsoft's stance on no console left behind? And it doesn't, because they're still supporting them. And that's something you guys have to realize is there's a difference between not manufacturing them and not supporting them. They're still supporting them for 1 to 2 extra years because they're still going to get the games, because Microsoft has already said, look, our exclusives are going to come to all of our platforms. That's just how it is. And then in time, they're going to focus everything on the Series X and fully utilize all the power, because a lot of people don't seem to realize that Microsoft is not saying that there's not going to be any exclusives for the Series S. There's going to be exclusives for the Xbox platform as a whole, the ecosystem. And if you want the best version of it, you would buy the Series X version, which is the version that's the most optimal way to play. It's the intended version because it's the best version, but it will be able to run on the other consoles. And that's what a lot of people seem to think, is that the older consoles are going to bottleneck, game development. It's no, it's not. It's they're going to make the Series X version, and then they're going to make the One X version or the Xbox One version. But somebody also pointed out something interesting to me that was actually fascinating, was you have to think about it. At the time, developers were making these games for the Xbox One, because yes, even though they knew about the Series X, it wasn't officially out, so they were primarily focusing on getting these first-party games to run on the Xbox One. And it makes sense. A lot of these first-party games that are coming out at the start of the console generation makes sense that, yes, they're going to be able to run on the One, because they were already doing that. They can already run on the Xbox One with no issue. They were already designing them, and then they just make the Series X version. And then it makes sense because after a year or two, in that time frame, developers are able to start focusing new games specifically on the new hardware. So then in the third year of the console, bam, you get all the exclusives that are primarily designed for this new hardware. And that's something a lot of people seem to forget, is that these consoles, yes, they're going to still get the first party exclusives. They will. Are they going to be the best versions of them? No, but they're still going to run and they're still going to work. If you want the best version, you would buy the new hardware. And yes, I get it. Some people are saying that Microsoft is just not giving you incentive to upgrade, but it's well, they are, because even though, yes, you are going to still get the games on the older consoles, they're not going to be the best version to play it at. And especially if you want to play multiplats, then it makes sense just to buy the new Xbox, because it's the most powerful console. Like, it's able to run these games incredibly well. And then the first party games, obviously, if you want the best experience of the first party games, you would buy the new console. And I get it. Microsoft is taking this more consumer friendly approach, like building an ecosystem. And some people kind of got on my grill about this on Twitter, because I was like, you guys have to realize that services are the future. Like, I get it. Companies still make hardware. Like, companies like Apple, they still make hardware, but they notice that most of their money is going to come from services in the future. Like, you would be ignorant to say that, oh, hardware is always the primary goal. Like, no, it's not. It's because the future is pushing towards services, because hardware in time is going to be irrelevant when there is no hardware, when it's just all software. And this is something that a lot of people seem to not realize, like, especially when you don't pay attention to trends like in the smartphone industry. Like, some people are saying, well, yes, Apple still makes iMacs and iPads and everything, so you can't say they're making money on services. Apple literally did an event like last year focusing all on services and barely any hardware. Yes, they still made hardware, and the hardware makes money, but you notice that they're putting a lot of attention to the softwares because they realize that they want you into their services. They don't care. As long as you get an iPhone, they don't care. Like, as long as you are able to get into the Apple ecosystem, they're able to push their services, and then they make more money off you. Because think about it. There's already a ton of iPhones in the world. There's a ton of people in this world that own iPhones. If all of them got services, Apple would make a shit ton of money. Like, if everybody started using a lot of Apple services like Apple Music, Apple News, Apple TV, like, etc. Yeah, Apple would make some serious bank. Like, and they already do. Like, Apple is still one of the most profitable companies on the planet right now. Like, because they know their clientele. They know that the people that buy their products always keep coming back. It's like people that buy Ford. Like, people that buy a Ford truck always keep coming back because they like buying them. Like, it just happens. Like, it's natural. But even Apple knows that software is the future. Yes, they still make hardware, but they realize that the services are the big goal. Because yes, you can charge somebody upfront one time and you get the quick, easy buck, but the long-term gain from services makes much more sense than just getting the upfront price of, I would say it makes more sense than just getting the upfront, money. Like, it makes sense that you want to charge somebody over time, let them get accustomed to your ecosystem, keep them in there, and you just keep charging them. Like, it makes more logical sense. Like, this is something people need to realize, is that yes, Microsoft is focusing more on providing services than they are the hardware. Even though, yes, some people can get mad at them for not saying that every game that's coming out at the start of this next console generation, the next generation, that they are primarily focusing on the Xbox Series X. And it's funny because a lot of people are not getting mad at Sony for basically ditching the PS4. Like, a lot of the games coming to the PS5 will not run on the PS4. But nobody's getting mad at Sony about that. But yet when Microsoft says, hey, we're going to allow our games to run on the older console so that it gives you guys much more time to upgrade. It gives you more time to see what's being worked on, and it basically gets value out of your console, so that if you didn't just recently buy the console, like say the Xbox One X or the One S, then you would get more life out of it. You would get your money's worth, and then in time you would upgrade to the new console. And this is something that I consider as a smart move, even though yes, I get it, some people don't agree with Xbox's stance of going towards services and pushing towards xCloud and stuff like that, but it makes sense. When Xbox Game Pass came out, yes, people thought it was a joke, and now it's extremely popular. And now they're going to bundle it with xCloud for free. Microsoft's cloud gaming services for free with Game Pass Ultimate, with no extra charge. That's crazy. And if the rumors are true that Xbox Live could become free, just basic communications and multiplayer, and that they make a premium version so that you can get the discounts and you can get exclusive and games a month, every game a month, that would be big. And it makes sense because They're trying to push you, as long as you get an Xbox and get into the ecosystem and start being a part of it. That's what matters the most, because that's how you build a consumer base. That's how you build a loyal fan base and bring in new people, because you're being open. You're not being exclusive. Like, you're being inclusive. And this is something that a lot of people need to realize is very smart. And yes, I get it. It does suck that these consoles that came out recently, like the One X and the One S all digital, just recently came out, and now they're being canned. But it makes sense, guys, because it's basically a mess. It blogs the whole market, and it just causes so much confusion that logically it makes sense, because they're still going to be supported. They're still going to get games. They just won't make them. And that's okay. Like, people need to realize that it's okay. It makes sense. This isn't something that's weird. This isn't anti-consumer. This isn't Microsoft being hypocritical. This is logical sense. This is logical reasoning. You want to make it easier for your consumers. If you want a basic Xbox, buy the One S. If you want the mid-range, you would buy the Project Lockhart. And if you want the Big Daddy, you would buy the Series X. And I use that terminology because that's what makes sense, is they're making it simple. Budget, mid-range, high-end. Just like PCs. They're trying to make it simple for y'all. They don't want to make it complicated. And yes, if you still have a One X or a One S all digital, congratulations. You're still going to get games. Like, you're still going to get support. Like, they're not just going to ditch y'all, but you also have to understand that in time, that's what happens, because those consoles, like, when they start focusing games on the Series X and the Project Lockhart, you're not going to get games, because they just simply won't be able to run, because they're relying on the new hardware. And this is what's going to push the industry forward, because the industry is going to get pushed forward. Because, like, I know some people say, like, the SSDs. Yes, it is true, because most games are designed with the lowest common denominator, because most people that build PCs do not have SSDs. They have hard drives. And that's why they make games run on hard drives. And now that the consoles are specifically using SSDs, now we're going to see a shift where developers are going to make games designed for SSDs and not hard drives. And it's going to push the industry forward. There's going to be probably smaller file sizes, and it's going to make things much more efficient. And we're going to get better games. But also, you have to keep in mind, like, pumping a lot of money and research saying that the SSD is going to change everything. It's not. It's going to increase load times. That's pretty much all it's going to do, is increase load times, or decrease load times. I'm sorry about that. Like, it's not going to give you extra frames, because that's not what they do. Like, an SSD's job is just to read and write data much quicker. It's pretty much all its job. Like, it's just storage. That's what it is. Nothing more, nothing less. And with the Xbox event coming up on Thursday, it's going to be interesting, because we're going to see what Microsoft has been hiding all this time, you know? But that's all I have for you guys. I wanted to make this a little bit more shorter, a little bit more bite-sized, like a little bit more tangible for y'all, because the big episode is going to be Fridays, because we're covering that event, and I'm excited to cover it. But I love you guys to death. Please be safe. I hope you guys continue to have a wonderful weekend. Or I wouldn't even say a weekend. I would say just a wonderful week, because, you know, the weekend hasn't come yet. And we're going to have a really fun weekend when we talk about the Xbox event. So I love you guys to death. Please continue to be safe. Thank you guys for coming back and listening. It really, really means a lot to me. And I'll see you guys on Friday. Bye, guys. Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.